Let's now get the thoughts of House Ways and Means Committee Chairman Joey Salceda joining us on the line. Congressman Salceda, welcome to the final word.
Yes, good evening. Magandang gabi po.
So, there are so many opinions on this, but we'd like to get you to weigh in. Should the excise tax on fuel be suspended amid consecutive oil price hikes?
First, we need a law for that, and there's no time for it.
Mm-hmm.
So what you need to do really is what the existing law allows. There is a provision in the program which essentially says that if the revenues exceed the target, and in this case the VAT on oil, because the assumption is $70 and now it's $95, and therefore they estimate there's at least 9.8 billion in excess VAT that could be used essentially to alleviate three major sectors: the fisher folks, of which 53% of their cost is really in oil; the farmers, because of their transport costs and their mechanization; and of course the ordinary workers who had to take public transport. So essentially, a fuel discount, fuel price discount, could be the instrument in order to immediately provide relief to the sectors.
Okay, so you're proposing that this would be like a form of assistance for the worst hit sectors like farmers, fisher folk, and the transport sector.
Correct.
Okay, what about for oil industry players? Should the requirement to mix ethanol into fuel products also be suspended?
Yes, that's also one. I already sent to the President, as well to the Speaker, a full memorandum for the President that essentially outlines both tactical and strategic. And in short, basically, we're proposing one, that relief program, and second, basically, that we relax the biofuel requirement because it could reduce the price on gasoline by 3 pesos. And it could also improve the domestic supply of sugar. And then, of course, there are two other things. Because when we invited the industry players, the oil players, to Congress, and all of them were there, and I was asking them how they conduct their pricing and how do they cost, and therefore most of them are cooperative. They said they're providing all these discounts to their patrons in terms of fisher folks and farmers, and of course to jeepneys as well as buses.
Okay.
But we need to increase price monitoring to ensure that there's no unreasonable rise in the price that is not in consonance with the increases in the world market. At the same time, of course, that they should comply with the minimum inventory requirements, so we could at least avoid sudden shocks if we don't have existing inventory.
Okay, what are
now?
Yes, go ahead.
For the strategic, we have been proposing, since this happened in 2021, ahead of 2022, when the price went up as high as 114, the Congress, in fact the committee, approved essentially a flexible excise tax regime for such pervasive and socially sensitive product. We cannot have an inflexible tax regime. So in other words, if the MOPS, or the means of plot Singapore, exceeds $80, then we will decrease the excise tax exactly by how much the trading law increased it.
Okay.
However, if it's somewhere lower, like $45, which is, of course, we've looked at the chart essentially since 1945, and basically we will increase the tax. So in other words, the additional revenues that could be generated once, because if you look at the price of oil globally, it has been very volatile actually. So most likely it cannot stay at, although they're saying that it can reach as 107, just because of the pronouncements of Russia as well as Iran, Saudi Arabia, and of course what's happening in Libya. But I think once things stabilize, and given the demand, pressures on demand due to the interest rate increases by the U.S., by Powell, by U.S. Fed, we would expect that these prices should normalize.
So
eventually.
there are those mechanisms in place, but how come parang hindi po siya nagkikick in?
I think it has already been announced essentially by the Economic Managers Group that they are preparing for the release of subsidies.
Okay.
As I've said, there is 99.3 billion immediately, and I think inside the DSWD, there are assistance to individual in crisis situation as well as other
Okay. So
instruments
in
that
the
can be
form
used for.
in the form of
Yeah.
assistance. But what are your thoughts, sir, on the possibility of reviving the oil price stabilization fund?
It doesn't work.
Okay.
That's why we are proposing a flexible excise tax regime. When it goes beyond 80, then we reduce the excise tax. When it goes down to, let's say, 45, we then increase the tax. So immediately there is no need for like some kind of a fund that essentially where you don't know where it goes eventually if it's being passed on to consumers. But rather, under a flexible excise tax regime, immediately if it hits above 80, then we immediately automatically reduce the excise tax by 2 pesos, for example. And if it goes down, let's say to below 450, then we increase the tax by similarly by 3 pesos. So in short, within that band, it could be stable, but between 60 to 80, but definitely a flexible excise tax regime, the immediate benefit in terms of lower cost, as well as, of course, savings for can automatically go to the consumers rather than to some oil company.
You mentioned earlier that you think prices will stabilize eventually, but what is your outlook on oil prices, especially with, for the holiday period?
The assumption in the budget is between $60 to $80. In other words, the average is $80. Of course, now it's 95. And Goldman Sachs essentially sees it at 107, but that's a little bit lower than the 2022 high of $114. So when I say that given the demand and supply situation and given the rise in renewables, and it has become more ample, especially with the introduction of hydrogen power, then the dependence of the world on fossil fuel would definitely go down. So in short, I think it cannot stay elevated for longer, let's say, I think beyond 2023. So I would expect those prices to essentially stabilize exactly between $60 to $80.
All right, but not before the holidays. All right, thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much.
Ways and Means Committee Chairman Joey Salceda.